it's so nice at the front hearing you guys singing. Like, it's just really nice. So thank you, Dave. I reckon the Maltese have got the right idea. We say good morning, but to say bonjour or however they say it, well, I think you got the right idea. It's amazing. Like last week we had, I think, one person in Malta watching, and now there's a whole stack of people from what I'm told. So it's just amazing. Yeah. So like people in Tassie and England, and it's just, and you're here. That's the important bit, isn't it, right? Let's just pray. Father, I thank you for every individual in this room. I thank you for those that will watch this live or watch it at some time in the future. I thank you that your truth sets us free, that when we take on board your way of doing life, it makes life better. You have plans and dreams for us, and when we step into that, everything just works so much better. And I thank you for your truth. I thank you that we find it in your word. I thank you for who you are, God. Do you know, I never thought I would start one of these little talks with quoting John Wayne. For those that are sort of beneath a certain age threshold, he was an old school movie Hollywood actor, right? And John Wayne said this: life is hard, but it's... Actually, I can't even quote John Wayne right. He said, life is tough, but it's tougher when you're stupid. Now, that's the moment you're thinking of someone else, not in this room. Don't look at anyone beside you, left and right. Don't look around. Stop looking. Just face straight ahead, right? Life is tough, but it's tougher when you're stupid. And if you've ever watched someone do something and you think, that's not smart, I would never do that. It could be in the way they spend their money. It could be in the way that they develop relationships, or even the things they do that become habits, that become destructive habits in their lives. Have you ever wished someone would take on your advice? You know, you see someone doing something, you think, oh, I wish they'd just listen to what I have to say. I could help them. I could give them some really good advice. Well, back in 1990, we got involved in a quarantine station in South Australia, importing Angora goats from Texas. And we put a whole lot of money. We sold land, farmland we sold it, and we put it into this thing. And in the end, we lost everything we owned. And I wished that my dad had said to me, son, I don't think this is a wise thing. I wish he had spoken up. I wish he had warned me. I wish he'd told me of the dangers and what we're threatening to lose. But he didn't. He just stayed silent. And I've realised since that even if Dad had told me, given me his wisdom, I wouldn't have followed it. Because I wanted to do what I wanted to do. Why do smart people do things that just don't make sense, right? To ourselves, or even from other people watching from outside. A few years ago, I was diagnosed with coronary heart disease. So the main aorta to my heart has a reduction of up to 70% of the flow to my heart. And when they told me that, you would think that, knowing what we know, I would lose some weight. It would be nice, like even my little aorta is larger than it should be, which means the walls of it are thin. And if my blood pressure goes, I could, right? And if you look at my family history, every single male on both sides of the family, it's their heart that's taken them out. My great-granddad, 47 years of age. On Mum's side of the family, Mum's dad, in his 60s, retired and then heart attack. So why don't I? Well, I like food, especially food with sugar in it, or fat, or carbs, or even better, a combination of both. All three. Just go for it, right? See, knowing something and changing our behaviour isn't the same, is it? Now, 3 weeks ago, I stood here and I made a statement. I said that I'm going to lose 10 kilos in 10 weeks.
How are you going with that, Lex?
There are some questions I'm welcome to hear you ask, right? See, I've lost 3 kilos in 3 weeks, right? Right. But see, I haven't lost that because I said I would, because I've said I would before. You know the Monday diet? I've done that. You go for it all week and then Monday, that's when I'm going to start again, right? But the reason I've lost 3 kilos so far is because for 3 weeks, every day, multiple times a day, I have made tiny decisions not to eat things that will ultimately affect my health. Little tiny decisions. And the problem with that is we have our family living with us at the moment, extended family, and my son-in-law is skinny. And he loves these beautiful, you know, those lovely soft buns, those fruit buns. They're so soft and they're just sitting on the bench. They're always there. And I'm imagining big chunks of butter just jammed into it. And when you bite into it, you bite those raisins and I hear this voice in my head saying, one won't hurt. And I tell myself that if I eat that now, I'll just have a bit less for tea, or tomorrow I'll be a whole lot better, right? Or if I blow it, there's always Monday, isn't there, right? So I don't know what you tell yourself when it really matters. But I do know this, that for every bad decision that you've ever made in your life, you talked yourself into it. And so did I. Why do we make decisions that we regret? Is John Wayne right when he said life's tough, but it's tougher when you're stupid? Are there times we are just stupid? Well, no, we're not. Because stupid is talking about our intelligence. It's an issue of intelligence. And the reason we do this, it has nothing to do with how smart we are. The reason we make decisions that later we regret is far more brutal than that. It's far more confronting. 600 years before Jesus was born, the prophet Jeremiah, he wrote these words, and he said, this is in Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 9, he says, the heart is deceitful above all things. And then Jeremiah adds 2 Hebrew words that mean incurably incurable. The NIV translates it, it says, and beyond cure. Jeremiah saying the heart is deceptive above everything else, and it's incurably incurable. There is no cure for this. And then he adds this, and who can understand it? Now, you'd think Jeremiah was talking about people far from God, but he wasn't. And if you're thinking you're a Christian and you're a new creation, well, when Paul is talking about a new creation, he has some advice for us. But if you're thinking I'm a Christian, so I'm a new creation, that's your spirit that's been changed. But Jeremiah's not talking about our spiritual condition, and you know he's not talking about this thing. It's not the physical pump, is it, right? He's talking about our mind, our intellect, our reasoning, our emotions, our will. And do you know what's so confronting? Is that every one of us, and there's no exceptions, Mitch, you're not an exception, mate. You and I, same boat, right? We all have something broken internally in us that will never change this side of eternity. Decisions, they aren't made in this emotionally neutral place. So I want to show you in a moment how this works, but I'll explain it first, right? When you want something, and emotionally you're engaged in this, you want it. What you do is you employ the best legal team in the world. You get almost the best barrister in the world to argue your case for you. You go to the part of your brain that comes up with reasons and logic, and you employ it to take what you want and turn that into something you need. Because when your brain is telling you what you need, not what you want, but now you need it, once you believe you need it, you are so gullible to everything else your brain tells you about why you must have this. And you believe it. It's like your brain is so brilliant. You'd be a fool not to follow what your brain is telling you. And you've employed your brain to do it. So I'm going to give a demonstration. So Jeff, can you come out here for a sec? Thanks. Just for a moment, Jeff, you have the privilege of being my brain. Right? So come over closer, because my brain and my emotions are very close. So emotionally, I watched the film Born Free with a lion. And I have all my life wanted a pet lion cub. I'm engaged in this emotionally. And so I'm going to employ my brain to help me with why I should have, why I need a brain. So brain, why do I need a pet lion cub?
Well, it's easy, really. It's not a hard decision.
It's not, no.
It's an absolute need
Yes.
because of all your birds out there and all the grain. You've got
Yep.
so many mice out there.
Yes,
Mice
rats
plague.
too. Yes,
Rats,
yes,
mice and
yep,
rats.
yep.
So you need something that can really just clean them up and solve that whole
Fantastic.
issue.
I wouldn't have thought of that.
And a lion cub, it'll do the job.
That's
and as
great.
Even the biggest rats, the lion cub. But there's more.
Okay, yep.
There's more. That's just a minor. That's just like
Yep,
the bones.
yep.
The real need is you've started working away for a few days
Yes,
every now and then,
yes.
and you're leaving poor Coral at home all by herself, and it's pretty wild out at Hillside.
Yes.
You never know who's going to
Yep.
turn up and be a threat to your
Yes.
wife. And so if you've got a lion cub and you train it while it's young into a proper, it can be a real guard dog.
That makes sense.
Guard lion.
That's great. Cats don't scare anyone.
One more
Yep,
reason
yep,
I came
yes.
up with. This is the cinch. Which,
I love it.
Right? Okay.
Yeah, I'm loving it already.
A lion
gonna get
cub
one.
is so unique
Yes.
that everyone wants to see it, right?
Aha.
So this is the Jesus card, right? You could bring that lion cub to church every week, sort of like a mascot
Here,
for
pussy,
Red Gum.
pussy, pussy. Yep,
Yeah.
Yep.
And you will have people will flood and come in
want
these
to.
stores to see that lion cub, and their lives could be changed. They could get to meet
And we
Jesus
could do Daniel and the lion thing without a den.
every week.
We could.
So that's
Wow,
that's
I'm
the real
so
one.
excited. I'm
It's
getting a
people's
lion
lives.
cub.
It's people's lives
This
will be
is
changed.
brilliant. Thank
Can
you.
I go now?
Thank you. Oh, I feel so energised. This is just the best news. Who agrees with my brain that this is a really good thing to do? See, when our brain is telling us stuff, it sounds so great. But if it came out of someone else's mouth, it's not so convincing. It could nearly sound laughable. And yet we take it on. We are so convinced by what we tell ourselves, even when it doesn't make sense, right? Because we have this incurable deceiver locked inside of us. And it doesn't matter if you're a Christian. When I was trying to work out about going to this quarantine station in South Australia that we'd put all our money and energy into it, right? When I was making the decision, do you know what? If you'd been around, I would have told you that God had shown me we should do it. That God was in this, that God was directing us. I was totally convinced about that. And you know when we lost everything? I discovered that God wasn't in it at all. It was just me. I had a little whisper in my ear, myself. I was talking to myself. And we all make decisions that we regret. And some of them are not so important, but there's people in this room, and you have made decisions that you regret so much that it's almost too painful to talk about, to try to go back to. You can't deal with it. I have a friend in another state who blew up his marriage, and he can't go back and remake the decisions that he made. And it's only God's grace and God's mercy through Christians that is helping him, making a difference right now in his life. And Paul, when he's talking in Galatians chapter 6, I want to paraphrase what he said. This is Lex's version of what, you can read the real thing if you want to correct me. But Paul says, if we make decisions that create really deep regrets, or if someone else does, and you're a mature Christian and you're trying to restore them, do it gently, because you've got this broken deceiver inside your head too. And you're just as vulnerable. It might be not in the area that they've messed up in, but restore people gently, because you could also make a mess in some area of your life. And how we deal with the decisions in our life, how we deal with the decisions that other people made that affect us, how we do decisions, it really affects the story of our life, doesn't it? Like, the story of your life is being written one decision at a time. And for some of you, you've got all your life ahead of you. For some of you, thinking, well, most of my book's been written. But you know what? There's still chapters that haven't been written yet. And they can have a different story. Now, you may not sell cars for a living, but I promise you that you are the world's greatest salesman to yourself on an idea or a dream or something you want is concerned. But as soon as you find yourself selling yourself on why you need a lion cub as a pet, when you are fully engaged and you're trying to talk yourself into why something is a good idea, just press pause. Because if something is a really, really good idea, you don't need to talk yourself into it. You don't need to justify it to other people. It's just a good idea and you know it and you run with it. And if you're making decisions and behind it fundamentally you just want to take the pressure off yourself, you'll nearly always make a decision you regret. And there's no such thing as a private decision, because they all become public. Our most personal decisions, they don't stay private. And that works both good and bad. Like, for example, when I was about 17, my mum and dad made a decision to leave Donald where we lived. Hi, all those in Donald. Hi, Jeff. Hi, Laurie. Hi, Jeanette. And come to Bairnsdale. That changed my life. I would not be standing here today if my mum and dad hadn't made a decision when I was 17 to come to Bairnsdale. And then when we went to Sydney, we took our girls with us. And so I have my oldest daughter planning a church with a husband in Sydney today because of a decision that I made. And then when we came back to Bairnsdale, our youngest daughter, Bronnie, and her husband and kids, they followed us here eventually. Coral didn't think they would, but they did. And so I have a 6-year-old granddaughter growing up as a country girl and not a city girl because of a decision that I made. Our decisions go on, don't they? They can be generational. And when Paul said that we become a new creation, he was talking about something that we can do, and he said you do it because you, through the process of renewing your mind. And he's echoing the words of Jesus. Wherever Jesus went, he said, be open to a new way of thinking. You've never heard him say that. You try reading the Bible, those words are not there, but that's what he said. And he used a Greek word, and it's translated the word repent. And our understanding of that is so narrow, and it's not quite right. The Greek word simply means be open to a new way of thinking. It means see things differently, reconsider. And it's used 24 times in the New Testament by different writers, and that's what they always mean every time. Reconsider, be open to thinking differently. And the starting point to better decisions is to reconsider, to change the questions you ask yourself when you're making decisions, because we all do ask questions when we're making decisions. They can be simply, will I enjoy this? Will I get something from this? Will I go to church this morning? Will this make me feel good? Will I like this? Do you know, good questions somehow open up a place inside of us to fit good decisions. Because quality questions, they create quality decisions. Andy Stanley has just written a book, and the title of the book is Better Decisions, Fewer Regrets. And it's a brilliant book. I'd really recommend it. And what we're going to do, starting today, going through over the next 4 weeks after today, we're going to look every week at one of those decisions. And it's a really brilliant insight into how we do what we do and ways to go forward, right? And so today we're going to look at just the first of those decisions that he refers to in the book. And it's this question. It's really simple. Am I telling myself the truth? And then he repeats it. Am I telling myself the truth? And then he adds one word. Really? Am I telling myself the truth really when it comes to making decisions? And of the 4 decisions that we're going to look at over the next couple of weeks, every one of them will guarantee you the results you want. Every time. If you ask yourself this question, I guarantee you'll make better decisions every time. The last one, there's no guarantees. It's a decision that if you ask this question about this decision, there's no guarantee, but it will give you the best outcomes, possibly. But we'll get to that at the last week. So the question, am I being honest with myself really? It's being willing to tell yourself the truth about yourself, even if it hurts. When we lie out loud to someone else, we've already justified that lie to ourselves, inside of ourselves. And it's uncomfortable to ask yourself, am I telling myself the truth, really? But if we do it, it's a way of firing the liar. Do you like that little rhyme? The little fire the liar. It's like it helps to kill this thing within us that wants to tell ourselves things that are not true. So I'm going to give you a little example of how we can ask this question. Why am I avoiding that person, really? Why am I putting off something that I know I'm meant to do? Why am I making excuses? Why am I going? Why am I not going? Why am I saying yes? Why am I wearing a flannel shirt? Why am I driving what I'm driving? I got asked to speak at an ESA camp recently down Eagle Point. And Coral said, do you want to take her little white car? And I said, no, I want to drive me ute. Because I want them to see a bloke get out with his flannel shirt on. And I didn't want to be in her little white car, right? Why do we do? I'm driving there. I'm thinking, I'm only driving the ute. It's not more fuel economy. I'm spending more money on fuel just for my image of pulling up in my ute. What? Why do we do what we do? Why am I looking? Why am I interested? Some decisions don't matter much, do they? They really don't. When I was at school in Donald, we went to Charlton to a swimming sports carnival, right? And one of my friends, his mum, made him a tomato sandwich for lunch. That's not a big decision. That has no consequences, does it? It's just a decision his mum made. But some decisions have ongoing consequences, don't they? And that day at the sports carnival, I found this earthworm. Big, juicy, red earthworm. Some of you are going ahead where you shouldn't go. And I got his lunchbox. And I opened up the sandwich and I curled it up amongst the tomato in his sandwich. And at lunchtime, when he bit into it, half the worm was in his mouth and half the worm was hanging out. And you know when someone's got spaghetti and they go, he just sucked it back. We're all watching. And he goes, and he sucks it back in. He starts crunching on it. And I think that's when he bit into its guts. And you know, all the dirt and the muck and stuff inside a worm, and the flavour hit him. And his reaction, it was gold. He just, it was so good. For the rest of his life at school, his nickname was Worm. Everyone just called him Worm. See, some decisions we make have ongoing consequences, right? And it's the same logic we apply, the same process we do to small decisions as we do to big decisions. And when Jeremiah is talking about this thing, this deceptive thing inside us, he asks this question: who could know it? And it's a question I've asked myself many times. I think it's actually a question you've asked yourself many times too. And it sounds like this: why did I do that again? Why did I decide? Why did I do that again? Why do I do what I do and regret it later? And not only do we lie to ourselves about ourselves, but we have this thing called a confirmation bias. And we look for stuff that will support what we already believe. And it empowers us to see what we want to see and hear what we want to hear. And enables us to tune out all the evidence that's contrary to what we believe. What our assumptions are, we just tune it all out and we just keep going. Lindy Chamberlain got the rough end of the stick with this one. There are people that end up in prison innocent because of confirmation bias. And if we want something to be true badly enough, we'll find the evidence to prove it. There are people that run around America with cameras trying to find Bigfoot. There are people that believe that the Tasmanian tiger still exists, that it's not extinct. That we have black panthers running around the Australian bush. You see it on the current affair every year or so. Someone's got a bit of footage of a black cat late in the day and it looks like a black panther, and there's black panthers out there. And we tell stories about the one that escaped from the zoo and it was the mascot for the army and all these things, right? But we do the same thing with vaccinations. We do the same thing with COVID. We would rather be proven right than know what's true. And so we don't go on a truth quest, we go on a confirmation quest. And a confirmation bias can divide people. It can divide churches. It can divide nations. If you look at America in this last election was divided through a confirmation bias, where certain elements of the media were against Trump, certain groups in the community were for Trump. And do you know what? They were both right. They both had the evidence to prove it. And Jesus didn't say that knowledge would set us free. He said it would be knowing the truth. Not just truth, but knowing the truth. And the opposite works the same way. Knowing what is not true puts you in a prison. So asking yourself, why did I react the way I did? That can be painful. But once you're honest with yourself, it's actually easier to be honest with other people. Or to put it another way, it's harder to be honest. It's harder to be dishonest with other people if you're being honest with yourself. See, I couldn't say I've lost 3 kilos if I hadn't lost 3 kilos. But you don't know, because I don't look any different. I've got to lose 30 before I look any different, right? Now, what's the real reason you don't call your dad or your mum or your brother or your friend? What's the real reason? That's a brutal question. But if we ask ourselves these brutal questions, the answer we don't have to do anything with. But if we know what's true, what we're telling ourselves is true, it sets us up to make better decisions. Just being honest with yourself, even if you don't do anything about it, if you're at least honest. Am I telling myself the truth, or am I selling myself on a regret? We are prone to talking ourselves into things that we regret later. But it doesn't have to be that way. If we can just ask ourselves before we make certain decisions, am I being really honest with myself? Am I telling myself the truth? Really? It's so simple. It's so hard. It's so liberating. It will change the way you decide in all sorts of areas of your life. You may not end up putting a worm in someone's sandwich, but we do make decisions that have long-term consequences. So let's ask ourselves, am I really, really being honest with myself? Let's pray. God, I thank you that you talked about truth, knowing truth, that it would set us free from the prison that we put ourselves in so easily. And I thank you, God, that you made us, you can fix us, but there are certain things in our sin nature that we just have to live with, and the only way forward is to have a different strategy. And I thank you that Jeremiah had the guts to tell us that there's something broken inside our heart that would take us to places that deceive us. But you have a way, you have a solution, and I thank you.